Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Buddy Finance video. So today I'm going to be talking about Buddy Ragnarok. So I am not a financial expert, I am just a person who tends to take a very active role in the secondary market. So this is not necessarily a guide on what cards to buy or like anything, but this is just to act as more of a video kind of informing you what the secondary market is probably going to do and how the secondary market is going to react as a result. Buddy Ragnarok is a pretty interesting set in which it is the first time a Buddy Fight set is not randomized. So it is a singleton based set where we are guaranteed one of every single card in the entire set, even the higher rarity cards that you'd normally have to buy a whole case for. That makes it pretty interesting, throwing rarity out the window, and it's definitely going to act completely different than every other Buddy Fight set before it as a result. So a lot of the cards are going to be priced based off of their demand and how much supply is going to be of them. So the unfortunate thing is, as I've been warning people more and more about the fact that this is going to be a very, very limited set, and it's going to be a little bit on the harder side to get. That's looking to be pretty true because not only have we had a couple of US distributors drop the game, so now there's a less initial from them. We also are having stores not sell the final few sets because these are very, very high-risk sets, because if the demand isn't there, then they just invested so much into the set to basically lose a lot. So we've also had a couple of stores, as a result, not want to sell any singles from the last few sets. So that's going to make the secondary market, at least on the US side, a little on the interesting side and a little bit on the tighter side because we have this less initial stock. Going over some of the interesting aspects of what the set is going to hold, we have some reprints on the Glory Valiant side, where these are very, very popular cards that are getting reprinted, and to be honest, I don't think these reprints are going to do anything to change the price of the cards. So based on what I can tell from the US market, these cards aren't going to be in that high of stock to where it's going to make the price of any of the older cards decrease, or there's going to be enough introduced into the market to where the price is going to be lower than the initial stock. So while reprints are very, very good, I just don't think that there's going to be enough to really make a ginormous shift into the market, and the prices are actually going to probably be a little bit higher than the base prices because of the alternate art and the severe lack of stock that they're going to be in. Hopping over to the Revival Buddies side, we have a slew of different SPs, and we even have some SPs in Glory Valiant as well. And we're guaranteed an SP, but we're also guaranteed a base. So this is going to make the SPs a lot more sought after than the bases, but depending on the SP, that could also crush the price of the base because now we have effectively double the stock of certain cards into the market. Because, you know, again, rarity is thrown out the window, and it doesn't necessarily matter what it was in Japan. It's going to act differently in the English market. As a great example, we have something like Tenbu Rebuddy, where he has a nice SP, and then we're also going to be getting a Tenbu Rebuddy as a normal card. So, obviously, in Japan, the prices are different because one's an SP, one's harder to pull, and one's just a normal card. But in the US and the English language, this is going to behave a lot differently because the card's demand is going to dictate the majority of the prices. So while the SP is really, really nice, that's only going to crush the normal price of the normal card. Even though they're the same rarity, people would rather have the fancy, nice looking art rather than the plain art. So SPs and SRs are going to follow that similar pattern, where the SPs are going to have the more sought-after demand because they're nicer looking cards, and then the plain versions, some are going to be suppressed because a lot of the demand is going to be in the SPs. And on top of which, we'll actually probably see more of the normal art if it had an SP variant, because people want to keep the SPs and they'll try to sell off their normal arts. So we're actually going to have a higher increase in some of the normal art cards versus the SPs. But if the card is going to be very, very popular and very, very strong, let's just take Drumbunker Dragon as an example. If that card's very, very popular and very, very strong, then it's not necessarily going to do that much to suppress the base version, because obviously once all of the SPs are gone or the SP price gets too high, then people start turning towards the normal version as they want to play the card. That's definitely going to be a very, very interesting thing that's going to go on with the set, is certain cards, even though they'll be double the stock, some of them, the prices won't be that much different because the sheer demand for the card will be there. And then certain cards will just have such an overwhelming amount of demand that they'll probably be absolutely insane to try to get, and as such hold a very, very high price tag. So Future Card Buddy Fight is a very good example of this, where it's just such a good card that basically almost anyone and everyone who's playing a Buddy Fight deck would probably want to get that card. As a result, because the supply is going to be so low and the demand is going to be so high, even though you don't need 4 copies of it, the fact that you'll still need 1 to 2 copies of it, and the fact that almost every single deck in the entire game can run it, will mean that it's going to have such a very high demand, and therefore it's going to hold a high price. But something such as like Legendary Kickoff, where it has a couple of more niche uses, that's going to have a lot lower demand and therefore a lot more supply, because not as many people are rushing to pick up that card. So that's just kind of like how the push and pull of the market is going to do, and obviously we already see some big effects on the secondary market as people are buying up cards based on some of the cards that were announced in the set. So a lot of the market is kind of going crazy on trying to have people finish their decks. So cards that were hard to find are continuing to be even harder to find because people are just buying up everything, and the market is definitely looking a lot healthier now than it did when Bushiroad made that unfortunate announcement a couple of months ago. So the market is still very strong. There is still a very clear demand for the game, and even though this is a very high-risk product, it's still going to end up being probably a profitable product for anyone who is selling singles, and I wish that I had bought more than what I did, so that way I could try to sell some singles, but I'm just a human being with limited capital. But regardless, it's definitely going to be a very interesting thing. The Japanese prices aren't necessarily going to reflect as true on the other markets around the world because their set's not fixed, our sets are fixed, and as such the demand for the card is going to outshine the, in quotation marks, rarity of the card. And the demand is going to start dictating the price of certain cards. So we might even see some of these like low-end cards have a higher price tag than some of the higher end cards, just because the demand is needed more for those lower end cards and there's less initial stock because of how it's distributed. So we could end up seeing cards that you need like 4 of start holding really high price tags, because if a lot of people are needing it and they need it at 4 of, and a booster box is only going to give you 1, then that kind of throws the whole thing into disarray, and it's definitely going to be a very, very rough time for the secondary market, but it is definitely going to show that there is demand, there is still health in the secondary market, and everyone who's been fire sailing kind of has already done their fire sales, so now the market is starting to grow back to normal, and with the last 2 sets being very low in supply, it's definitely going to be a very, very interesting time to look at the secondary market and buy some cards. I'm not necessarily saying you should always buy early, because sometimes the early prices might be a little bit higher than what the card might eventually level out to be, but definitely if you could get the cards as quickly as you possibly can, that's just something I would probably recommend, because knowing what I know about the Buddy Fight secondary market, cards are only going to get harder to find the longer time passes and as people aren't necessarily looking to sell off anymore because the majority of people already did, then the supply just isn't necessarily going to refill and refresh unless an individual really feels like they just want to off their stuff. But regardless, it's definitely going to be a very interesting time for the secondary market when the set drops, and it is looking like it's going to be a very expensive set overall. That's kind of all I really have for this video. Feel free to tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me how much of the set you're buying, if you're buying the set at all, just whatever it may be. But as always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next video.